Are you kidding me? You actually swapped our anniversary for a boys' trip. I blurted out, hardly able to contain the mixture of disbelief and fury that surged in my veins. I was standing in our dimly lit living room, the neon glow from the streetlights painting everything with a surreal, blue hue as my heart pounded so hard it felt as though it might burst. My name is Talia Monroe, and that night marked the turning point of a relationship I once thought was unbreakable. It all began on what was supposed to be a special evening, a milestone celebration of what we had built together over the past 5 years. Jake, my boyfriend, had casually nonchalantly mentioned that his boys' trip had been scheduled for the very same weekend as our anniversary. I had spent weeks anticipating our plans, a quiet dinner at our favorite restaurant, a walk along the river, maybe even a little dance under the stars. Instead, I was left reeling, feeling like our time together was as disposable as his last-minute excuse. I recall that conversation vividly. We were sitting on the worn-out couch in our apartment, a place filled with memories of laughter, quiet moments, and shared secrets. I had been humming a tune, looking forward to discussing our anniversary plans, when he said almost offhand, "By the way, I booked a boys' trip for us next weekend. I'm really looking forward to it." At first, I thought he was joking. But as the reality sank in and his eyes remained fixed on his phone, his tone unyielding and matter-of-fact, the sting of betrayal hit me like a freight train. His priorities had shifted, his promises broken, and I was left with a bitter taste of deception. For days, I oscillated between hurt, anger, and numbness. I wondered how someone I loved could treat our anniversary so carelessly. Friends tried to console me. Some said, "Maybe it's not about you, Talia. Maybe he just wants a break from the routine." But deep inside, I knew that it was more than that. It was a betrayal of trust, of the promises we once made. I started recalling every special moment we'd shared, the midnight walks, the whispered promises, and I felt the weight of all those memories crushing me. Then, amid that dark emotional storm, a wild, rebellious idea began to take shape. I was scrolling through a travel magazine one evening, trying to escape my thoughts, when I paused at an image of a tropical resort, sparkling blue water, pristine white sand, and luxurious palm trees swaying in the gentle breeze. A thought flashed in my mind. What if I booked that same resort, but with someone who understands what it means to value time and honesty? And the idea, which at first felt like a desperate impulse, slowly began to crystallize into a plan to reclaim my power by turning his carelessness into my own victory. I considered all the possibilities. My mind raced, and in a moment of clarity, I decided I was going to book that resort. Not for a solitary escape, but to create an evening that would rewrite the narrative, a night that would show the world exactly how I refused to be diminished by someone else's lack of commitment. And who better to join me on that journey than someone who had always been my confidant, a person who understood me better than anyone. That person was none other than Jake's own sister, MIA. Now, MIA and I had always been close. Even as children, we were inseparable, sharing secrets, dreams, and the kind of understanding that only siblings can have. Over the years, our connection had deepened into a friendship that transcended familial ties. I had seen her quietly support me through my ups and downs, and in many ways, she embodied the authenticity and loyalty that I craved in a partner. The thought of spending a weekend with her at the resort didn't feel like a typical act of revenge. It felt like an opportunity to rediscover the beauty of genuine connection, away from the toxicity of my failed relationship with Jake. So, I set the plan in motion. With trembling hands and a steely resolve, I booked a suite at the same upscale tropical resort that Jake had chosen for his boys' trip. The reservation confirmation email arrived with a crisp, professional tone, and as I read it, I felt an odd mix of triumph and sadness. Here I was, taking control, reclaiming my worth, and simultaneously mourning the loss of the relationship I had once believed in. I saved the confirmation on my phone and printed it out as a tangible reminder of the promise I had made to myself, to always prioritize my happiness, even when it meant making a bold, unconventional move. In the weeks that followed, I shared my secret with MIA, inviting her to join me on what I described as a getaway to celebrate new beginnings. I wasn't entirely sure how she would react. After all, the situation was laced with complications, but I explained that sometimes, when one door closes, another opens in the most unexpected way. MIA listened intently, and after a moment of reflective silence, she smiled gently and said, "Talia, sometimes the universe gives us a nudge when it's time to step into the light. I'd love nothing more to be a part of your journey." Her warmth and acceptance bolstered my resolve, and together, we planned a weekend that would become the turning point of my life. The day of the trip arrived, and as I boarded the flight with MIA by my side, I felt a surge of exhilaration. The airplane soared through the clouds, and with every mile we traveled, I felt the heaviness of past betrayal begin to lift. We chatted the whole way, sharing stories of our childhood, of dreams once unspoken, and of the quiet rebellion that had brought us to this moment. There was a lightness in her words, a promise of healing and the joy of rediscovery, a reminder that sometimes, the most profound transformations happen when we dare to take a leap of faith. When we finally arrived at the resort, a breathtaking oasis of turquoise waters, lush greenery, and luxurious amenities, we were greeted with smiles and a sense of serenity that felt almost otherworldly. Our suite overlooked the pristine beach, and for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. MIA and I spent the day exploring the resort, the vibrant pool area, the quaint cafes, and the hidden spots that only locals seemed to know about. Every moment was a revelation, every shared laugh a healing balm to the wounds of my past. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, we sat on the balcony with glasses of chilled champagne. The gentle sound of waves crashing on the shore provided the perfect backdrop for our conversation. I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't done in years, about the heartbreak, about Jake's callous decision to swap our anniversary for a boys' trip, and about the journey I had embarked on to reclaim my self-worth. MIA, I said softly. I never imagined that something as painful as this betrayal would lead me to rediscover who I truly am. I was devastated, but this trip, this experience with you, it's helped me see that my worth isn't defined by someone else's indifference. I'm finally learning to celebrate new beginnings and to live for myself. She reached out, squeezing my hand gently. I'm so proud of you, Talia, she replied, her eyes shining with sincerity. You're turning your pain into strength, and that is truly inspiring. The weekend passed in a blur of meaningful conversations, spontaneous adventures, and quiet moments of reflection. We took a sunset walk on the beach, during which I confessed how Jake's dismissal had initially made me feel small and unworthy, but how every step I took on that sandy shore was a step toward reclaiming my power. I was told I was boring, that I'd never travel or do anything exciting, I recalled. But look at me now, finding joy in the unknown, forging new connections, and stepping boldly into a future where I set the rules. By the time we returned home, I was a changed person. The trip had not only healed the wounds of betrayal but had ignited a spark of determination to live life on my own terms. Mia's unwavering support, coupled with the stunning backdrop of the resort and our shared adventures, had reaffirmed my belief that every ending is just a new beginning in disguise. Back at home, a new chapter. In the weeks and months that followed, I channeled the energy from that transformative trip into rebuilding my life. I updated my social media profiles to reflect a more authentic, vibrant version of myself, a traveler, a dreamer, and someone unafraid to embrace change. I also began volunteering at local community centers, sharing my story with others who had faced betrayal and uncertainty. My blog, which once focused on the pain of lost love, slowly evolved into a space celebrating resilience, adventure, and the beauty of reinvention. One day, as I was scrolling through messages from friends and followers, I came across a comment that made me smile. Your story is a reminder that even when life seems to crumble, you have the power to rebuild something even more beautiful. Those words resonated deeply with me. They were a testament not only to my journey but also to the universal struggle of overcoming betrayal and finding strength in vulnerability. I continued to document every moment of my newfound journey, the cities I explored, the sunsets that took my breath away, and the quiet moments of introspection when I revisited the memory of that painful dinner night. Each post, each photograph, became a chapter of a story that was not defined by the betrayal of my past, but by the promise of a future I was determined to create. Reflections on resilience and moving forward. Now, as I sit at my desk in my humble apartment, a space that now feels like a sanctuary of hope and creative energy, I reflect on everything that has transpired. I remember the cruel words that once threatened to break me, the stinging betrayal of an anniversary swapped for a boys' trip, and the bitterness that filled my days. And yet, in that darkness, I discovered a light, an unwavering belief in my own potential and an unyielding drive to forge a life that was entirely mine. I learned that sometimes, the most unexpected twists of fate have the power to redefine us. What began as an act of defiance, a plan to book the same resort with MIA, became a journey of rediscovery, healing, and ultimately, empowerment. I was forced to confront the painful truth of betrayal, and in doing so, I found that my worth was not determined by the opinions of others. I learned to embrace every new experience, every spontaneous adventure, as a stepping stone toward a better, more authentic self. I also found that sometimes, love can take on new forms. While the relationship with Jake was irrevocably changed, my bond with MIA deepened into a genuine friendship marked by mutual respect and understanding. We started sharing stories of our past struggles and our hopes for the future, supporting each other through the ups and downs of life. I wasn't sure where that friendship would lead, but I knew that it had become an integral part of my healing process, a reminder that sometimes, the people who lift us up come from the most unexpected places. A message for the heartbroken and the hopeful. To anyone reading this who has ever been told that your dreams are nothing more than fantasies, who has ever been dismissed as unexciting or unworthy, I say this: hold on to your vision. When those you love or those closest to you try to confine you with their narrow perspectives, let it be the fuel that propels you forward. For every word of dismissal, for every snide remark, there lies the potential to build something greater than you ever imagined. I was once told I was boring, a label meant to chain me to a life of mediocrity. But instead of accepting that, I took flight. I embraced the unknown, I ventured out into the world, and I discovered parts of myself I had long kept hidden. And in doing so, I not only proved my worth to others but, more importantly, reaffirmed it to myself. Every time I see a photo of that breathtaking resort, the place where I reclaimed my voice and took control of my destiny, I'm reminded that no one has the right to define you. Your path, your adventure, your life is yours to create, regardless of what anyone else might say. The journey isn't always smooth. There will be heartbreak, moments of doubt, and unexpected twists that test your resolve. But every experience shapes you into a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Final thoughts. Now, as I prepare to share my story at a local support group for those rebuilding their lives after betrayal, I feel a sense of peace that I hadn't known before that fateful day. I sit in my living room, surrounded by mementos of my journey, a framed photo of the resort, a journal filled with handwritten reflections, and a collection of postcards from my travels, and I smile at the thought of how far I've come. To anyone who is still locked in the pain of betrayal, who struggles with the feeling of being dismissed or unworthy, remember this: you are not defined by the hurt inflicted upon you, but by the strength you muster to rise above it. Turn every setback into a stepping stone, every hurt into the momentum for your own transformation. That is my story, a story of betrayal, of an anniversary spent in bitter solitude, and of a daring act of defiance that turned heartbreak into a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. I was once left alone, with a promise broken and a future rewritten by someone else's neglect. Instead of wallowing in the darkness, I chose to step into the light, to forge new connections, and to rebuild a life defined by adventure, resilience, and unwavering self-belief. So here's to everyone who has ever been told they are not enough, who has been labeled boring, unworthy, or unexciting. Let your journey begin where their words leave off. Embrace the wild, unpredictable beauty of your own path, and know that every moment of doubt can be transformed into a testament of your strength. For me, that journey took me from a broken anniversary to a breathtaking resort, from the echoes of betrayal to the gentle hum of hope, and every step of the way, I reclaimed a piece of my soul. And as I continue to write my story, one vivid, unforgettable chapter at a time, I'm ever grateful for the truth, the pain, and the promise of a future that is, undeniably, my own.